Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we sit down with the Army's head of counter-unmanned aerial systems to find out what his office is doing to guard against emerging threats. Also, the Marine Corps is getting rid of its Scout Sniper platoons. Find out why these units are vanishing from the force. Plus, a new deal on foreign sales of the F-35 fighter. Find out who's buying the advanced jets. And later, a look at the U.S. Naval Academy's annual Brigade Boxing Championship. Check out this year's edition of the time-honored tradition. Also, the head of the Army Research Institute for Environmental Medicine talks about how his group is looking to equip the soldier of the future. It's those stories and more in the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. Since the conflict in Ukraine has ground down to trench warfare, one staple of the battlefield has been drones. Small, inexpensive, and capable of dropping munitions or performing surveillance tasks, they are a constant presence on the front. The internet is awash in videos of drones dropping grenades and mortar rounds on troops on both sides, or correcting artillery fire from above. So how would the U.S. deal with similar threats in a fight? Defense News' Jen Judson sat down with the head of the Joint Counter Small Unmanned Aircraft Systems Office, Major General Sean Gainey, to talk about that and a range of other topics.
Thank you, General Gainey, for joining me at Defense News here at the Pentagon. You know, the internet, Reddit, etc., is awash in videos of Russians and Ukrainian forces dropping shells and grenades on each other from small commercial drones. So what are U.S. forces doing to counter threats like this? You know, how are you thinking about getting after this problem? And, you know, it's not just in Russia and Ukraine. You're seeing, you know, in the CENTCOM AOR as well. So if you could talk just a little bit about the threat picture and how that is causing you to think about.
Yes. First of all, Jen, thanks for the opportunity to be able to highlight what we as DoD are doing against the UAS problem from a counter-UAS perspective. DoD made a decision a few years ago to make the Army the executive agent to essentially frame this problem set and have a service lead and direct the effort with all of these services. So in that process, we essentially focused on three areas: developing a joint material solution, developing joint training and joint doctrine. We wanted to ensure that not just going after the material solution, but putting a framework around the material solution with training and doctrine, so you had a holistic capability when fielding to the warfighter. So specifically, what are we doing? So what we decided earlier is that having a system layered approach into a common C2 is the best method to get after this type of threat. There is no one capability that will defeat the range of threats that you will see with these unmanned systems out there, whether they're small quadcopters or large one-way attacks. So implementing a layered approach in a common C2 is really how we decided to get after this problem set and to build off of that.
So what have you learned specifically from the Russian invasion of Ukraine about the battlefield use of drones? Has the capacity exceeded your expectations here? I mean, this is nothing really new. You've seen this for a long time in other AORs, other theaters. But it seems that the proliferation is a bit staggering. We've seen the Army Chief of Staff talk about how there's this need for counter UAS, I think, more than we've heard in the past, just because of how much we're seeing it in.
Yeah, I believe what we've seen is it's a validation of the threat is real, the threat is evolving, and we as DoD are taking this seriously. And so what we're seeing in Ukraine really is a validation of what we're seeing inside of the CENTCOM AOR and our methodology of how to get after this threat, which, like I highlighted earlier, is the layered approach integrated in a common C2. And that's the best way to get after this threat. So globally, we're seeing, like I highlighted, that the threat continues to grow, and you'll see a range of employment of that threat from large to small amounts, depending on where you are and what AOR.
Well, let's talk about large amounts. The U.S. Army is starting to evaluate how to deploy their own swarms, for instance. We've seen that recently. But are drone swarms overhyped at this point? What's the feeling of those on the ground?
I wouldn't say overhyped. I would believe that anytime you can saturate an operator with a capability is something you have to take seriously. And we're taking counter swarm seriously. In one of our recent demonstrations, we demonstrated the capability of high power microwave and really how to get after a swarm with high power microwave. And so that is one of the technology areas we're looking at. And also we're looking at other ways from a operator overload perspective to be able to get after this threat and then provide the operator the tools to be able to defeat this threat.
Let's talk a little bit about training. How will individual soldiers be able to contend with or defeat drones? What are the size, weight, and power hurdles for them? How are you training individual soldiers to counter drones right now?
First of all, thank you for bringing that up, because so often we focus on the material solution, and really the material solution is only part of the overarching solution. So if you look at, just as you look at integrated air and missile defense, it's more than just the material solution to this part. It's the training aspect of it, but it's also more than just the defensive aspect of it. It's also the attack ops, left of launch capability, and the passive capability. So from a soldier's perspective, we want to teach them all of that and above. So every soldier needs to have that baseline knowledge of how to employ counter-UAS capability, how to do passive measures, and how to understand what the threat can do and see from their perspective and what you can do to prepare yourself. So what we've done is, I highlighted earlier, our first actual demo was focused on dismount handheld type capability, and it was looking at where can we in DoD provide more capability to the individual soldier on the ground, because the way drones are being employed, they essentially can be everywhere, and they're used everywhere because they're cheap. Anybody can use them, and they're really easy to learn. Mm-hmm. So providing the individual soldier a capability, which we're doing now, to be able to defeat this threat is critical. But not only that, providing them the training. So what we've done is we've done a lot of work in developing joint knowledge online modules, JKO modules. We've developed 4 of those, and we have a 5th one on the way, and those are focused on operator understanding, overall orientation to the problems and orientation to the systems, with an intent of every soldier eventually making that a mandatory class in the future. But more importantly, we've also stood up the Joint Counter-UAS Academy that's currently at Yuma, but will move to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, with the Air Defense School and the Fire Schoolhouse, and really consolidate there for a joint school where all the services will be able to provide. And they will provide an operator and a planner's course to give the warfighter that ability to not only execute the system, but also to plan it out, which we haven't had in the past.
Okay, so essentially every soldier that comes into the Army could be able to pick up a counter drone capability, a handheld type drone capability, and take out a drone if they saw it.
Absolutely, and that's our intent. And what we have to do, I think what's incumbent on us, as I get out there and get a chance to talk to the soldiers who are manning the systems globally, is what can we do to help you if you're not an air defense soldier that traditionally does air and missile defense. We got to help them, from a user interface perspective, make it easier on the soldier to operate these different type of systems, and then provide them the training to be able to employ these systems properly.
Thanks, Jen. When we return, a talk with the former head of the Army's research lab, looking to equip tomorrow's soldiers. And later, we go to the Naval Academy's annual boxing championship. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine is a futuristic lab where the force develops and tests all kinds of systems to help field and equip soldiers into the future. Keeping troops warm, keeping them dry, and keeping them fed while they fight are all under the purview of the Usarium. For details on how the group develops new products and makes an impact on the civilian world, last year Defense News Weekly talked to then Commander Colonel Troy Morton about how the Institute operates.
I would say, for me, a soldier in 2032 would be a soldier that carries equipment with himself or herself that provides advantages that are not currently available, and that those soldiers will be able to extend their time in austere environments and extend the range of field capabilities.
That's the officer in charge of the research that makes soldiers as close to superhuman as possible. The United States Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine, or Usarium, is the Army's lab where scientists test soldiers to develop technology that pushes their limits. And to borrow a phrase from scientists, they work on soldiers from their helmets to their boots and everything in between. That includes meals ready to eat. Military Times was recently invited for an inside look at the labs and also to learn about its impact on industry.
How many people have completed a specific class for, say, airborne or for air assault or those types of things. And it helps us do our work. So we utilize that in conjunction with that, and then the idea becomes a study that then becomes some concrete, workable evidence, and then that leads to a product development. And we put those products into circulation. And you will find many Usarium-touched products throughout the United States military. The uniforms that you wear today were were touched both by Usarium and Soldier Center. We are co-located in the same area, and that's why. The boots, touched by Usarium. If you eat in a DFAC, some of that is touched by Usarium. If you eat an MRE, it's Usarium. If you eat the protein bar that's distributed at basic training, it's Usarium. If you go to say airborne school and there's a heat injury, the initial treatment of that injury with cold water immersion or cold sheets, that's Usarium. Usarium touches military publications. Usarium touches special forces units. We do so much research with the Ranger School. Usarium touches the other military components, the Navy and the Air Force. We work with them, and ideas from here filter through there. Currently, the Army Body Composition Study. This study is going to help determine, are the current height and weight charts accurate? Should they be changed? But we like to take our initiatives and share them with industry. Some of the algorithms that are found in some of today's watches that are published or purchased on the market started here at Usarium. I'm a kind of a simple guy. I don't have a lot of treasures, but I had to get one of those watches that carries Usarium's algorithms in it. I'm not going to pull it out because I don't want to get in trouble, but now I wear a watch because it reminds me of part of Usarium. Another initiative that we have here is this proximal heating device. So this forearm device, this heating element that goes on a soldier's forearm and heats the surrounding tissue so that soldier, she can complete the task that's set before her. And what do we do with that? We take our prototype, and then we carry it to industry, to small businesses. And then small businesses work with Usarium to produce a product. And then that product goes into the market.
And in news from around the military, the Marine Corps is scrapping its Scout Sniper program and will soon house its snipers under reconnaissance rather than infantry battalions. Instead, infantry battalions will have scout platoons, per an email sent from the Corps' Plans, Policies, and Operations Department this week. Scout platoons will be made up of 26 Marines, 4 teams of 6 infantry Marines, with a first lieutenant and gunnery sergeant in charge. That's larger than scout sniper platoons, which typically have 18 Marines. The president of the Scout Sniper Association urged the Marine Commandant to, quote, reconsider this ill-advised policy decision. The transition is planned to happen immediately. And the Navy will rename a warship originally named in honor of a Civil War Confederate battlefield victory. The name of the guided missile cruiser Chancellorsville will be changed to Robert Smalls, a former slave and sailor. It's the latest move by the Defense Department to change the names of installations, buildings, and assets that were Confederate namesakes. Finally, in the contracting world, Singapore will exercise a contractual option to acquire 8 more F-35B fighter jets that Lockheed Martin will deliver by the end of the decade. The purchase triples the number of the nimble Joint Strike Fighters in the country's arsenal, following an initial purchase of 4 F-35s in 2020. The Singapore Air Force is replacing its current fleet of F-16 fighters. And that's it from around the military. When we return, we have a list of financial strategies to prepare you for life after active duty. And later, boxing at the Naval Academy. Don't go away. Welcome back. Before you make the transition from active duty to civilian life, it pays to know how to set up your finances. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack is here to show you how.
There are 2 things transitioning military members feel like they need more of when leaving active duty: time and money. Time is important not only in finding a new career, but also in being financially ready to leave the military. If you haven't already, research retirement savings options. As a civilian, you won't be able to contribute to your thrift savings plan unless you work for the federal government. But you can roll your TSP balance into another retirement plan. If you're offered a 401k with your next employer, that may be the way to go. Talk to a financial planner for guidance. And when it comes to your next employer, a civilian paycheck is vastly different than a military one. Your income is taxed, and you'll most likely be paying more in housing and food. So whether you've got a job lined up or not, you need to save, save, save. You should have at least 3 months of what it takes to stay afloat in a savings account. To find out what that number is for you, use an emergency savings calculator online or on your bank or credit union's website. Transitioning out of military service will take careful planning and strategizing. Both are skills you honed while on active duty. Use them to guide you on your journey. Seek the help of experts and a trusted financial partner, and you'll transition successfully.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next time. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, point your optic at Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com, as well as DefenseNews.com. And to be the most up-to-date airman on the flight line, sign up for our Early Bird Brief for stories delivered to your inbox each weekday. It's also an audio. Check out the podcast version, out now. And if social media is where you get your headlines, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. When we come back, the midshipmen at the U.S. Naval Academy go toe-to-toe on the canvas for the annual boxing championship. We'll take you there. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The U.S. Naval Academy held the 82nd Annual Brigade Boxing Championship in Annapolis, Maryland recently. Midshipmen are introduced to boxing in their plebe year as part of the Academy's physical education program. And many go on to participate in the sweet science as a club sport in the years that follow. We went to the Academy to check out the annual event. Boxing is a time-honored sport in the Navy, starting from a midshipman's very first days at the Naval Academy. Employed as an activity to improve both mental and physical toughness, It draws in young future sailors and Marines of all stripes, both men and women.
I ended up boxing. I saw it on TV, social media, things like that. I thought it was super cool. Good testament to how tough people can be, and I thought, I want to be more like that, so here we are. I had never boxed before the Naval Academy now. I started my plebe year in the summer, and so about 2 years now at the end of this year.
Before coming into the sport of boxing, I fought just where I'm from. It was a rough neighborhood, so a lot of times over basketball games. So,
growing up, I always did combat sports. I did wrestling, a very little MMA, and I always wanted to get into boxing. And I just coming here, I knew I always heard really good things about the team. So before I came here, it was always my goal to come and box for Navy.
The midshipmen must find the time to train around their academic responsibilities. They rise early to get a workout in before class starts and stay up late to get in practice after studying and completing homework.
I think the balance between boxing and studies is a good one. If anything, if I get more stressed with school, coming in boxing helps me kind of work it out and take my mind off of it.
That's definitely a tough one just because it takes up a lot of time, but it actually has been extremely rewarding. I find myself to work a lot better when I have a lot more things on my plate, which is interesting, but the balance hasn't been too much. It honestly helps me focus. If I have a lot of stress that I need to get out, boxing is a perfect sport for that.
There's definitely some sacrifices that need to be made on both ends, but as long as you're working hard in both areas, it's perfectly fine.
Balancing boxing and studies is quite easy. We have a dedicated period, sports period in our schedules to kind of go out, have fun, hit the bags a little bit, and talk with the guys. So definitely during that time, I do that. And for academic studies, I'm an English major, so all we do is read and participate and discuss those things in class. So honestly, how I balance it, it's not much of a big balance. It's just go to school, box, have fun.
It's pretty hard. I'm still learning how to do that. I'm a naval architecture major, so it's pretty tough. But really, I wouldn't be able to do it without my classmates and my professors that are really lenient with giving me extensions and helping me with homework throughout the week.
To balance boxing with my studies, I have to put in a lot more hours than a typical midshipman who does not play the sport. So my day is consistent. I'm the company commander of 25th Company as well, so my day consists of schoolwork in my company, and then right around 4 o'clock, 1600, that's when practice starts from about 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, so 2 hours of that, and then plus the running that we do at 5 in the morning on the track every day.
Midshipmen at this year's event said boxing was a valuable activity at the Academy, helping them prepare as future leaders in the Navy and Marine Corps.
Moving forward for the naval career in the future, I think boxing is good for testing your perseverance, your dedication. It's a lot of hard work, so keeping up with that, and that all translates into being a good leader as well.
Discipline, grit, hard work. I know it's gonna take me miles. The sport has taken me through so much just in the past 4 years, and I know I'm gonna keep on with it just because of how much it has helped me and just keep my focus in life and show me that I could do a lot of things that I didn't think I could do before.
I think that it'll prepare me for my career in the Marine Corps by just having that grit, pushing through hard situations and just making the most of what's in front of me.
It's just taught me toughness. It's taught me family. It's taught me so much about myself, how I respond to adversity, and that's everything you need to be in the profession of arms. Boxing has just made me tougher, and it's helped me cope with my adversity.
I think honestly you get hit. It's what Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get hit. And so for me, being a Divo, not knowing too much on the ship, I want to take challenges head on, and even if I get knocked down, I'm going to get back up and be better.
Boxing has prepared me for my career in the Marine Corps just by giving me that fortitude, that strong ground that I need to be disciplined, to be a disciplined officer for the people that I'll lead in the future.
I'd say boxing is a really useful sport. A lot of people are kind of afraid of it, but being a leader in the military, I feel like you have to know how to take a hit and keep going, face adversity, kind of helps you look fear in the face, and just kind of get it hit on.
Boxing has prepared me for a career military because there's not really that much else I could really simulate, going into battle or going to war. As an officer, it's important to know how to act under stress and be able to perform under pressure, and boxing does that. When you're fighting in front of 2,000 to 3,000 people, your friends and family, it's pretty nerve-wracking, but you can't go out there and just like lose your cool. You got to stay cool and calm under pressure. So it relates to that.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.